Okay, now we're going to look at a little more in detail at the different properties available for numeric controls. So everything that we place either on our block diagram and front panel, we can go into the properties and there's multiple attributes that we can change to customize it exactly the way we want to. So I'm going to start out by placing a numeric control on the front panel. So I already have my controls palette up. I'm going to expand the modern and then into numeric. And I'm going to choose the numeric control and I'm going to drop it right over here. Now, as we've learned in the past, as soon as we place an object on the front panel, that's really the best time to go ahead and change the label because it's already highlighted and you can just simply input a value. So I'm going to call this one input value. So really the only thing I want to do is that when the user enters a numeric value, I want it to be displayed on the numeric indicator here as well as on this meter. So I'm going to go back over to the block diagram real quickly and go ahead and wire that in. So there's the input value numeric control that I just created, and I'm going to go into the wiring mode and I'm going to just connect those so that when we run this, any value that I input here from a numeric control will be displayed on my meter and on my display over here. But before I do that, let's go in and take a look at some of the properties associated with this numeric control. So I'm going to right click and go down to select properties. If I go to properties, it's going to show every attribute available, and there's a lot of them. As a matter of fact, there's so many you can't even see them all on this window, so you would have to highlight and move over and get the rest of them. So I'm just going to show you a couple of them that are very common. First of all, I'm going to go into the data entry. So the data entry will allow us to set limits on the value that a user can actually supply to the control. By default, it'll allow you to put any numeric value here. So we're going to limit this. So we don't want to use the default limit, so I'm going to deselect that. What I want to do, I want to set a minimum and a maximum value of 0 and 100, because if I look at my meter, it scales 0 to 100, and I don't want the user to put any value outside of that range. So what I'll do, under minimum, I'm going to enter a value of a 0, and for the maximum, I'm going to enter a value of 100. One thing that I do have to be cautious of, even though I entered that minimum and maximum value, I also have to select how I want those values to be managed. So by default, it says simply ignore these values. I don't want to do that. So for the minimum, I want to select coerce. And for the maximum, I'll select coerce, which means that if I put in a value, say 110, it'll coerce it to 100. If I put in, say, a negative 50, it will coerce it to a 0. One other thing I need to do for the increment, instead of ignore, I always want to choose coerce to nearest. And that's going to allow us, if we're using the increment arrows, if we didn't select this, once we got to, say, 99, I could select it once to go to 100, and I can continue selecting it, and it would actually allow it to go above 100. So I want to select OK for this. So let's run this very quickly. We'll put in a value of 55. So you see that I've displayed a 55 here and here. I'm going to try to display a value of 152. If I do that, that's out of range, and it coerced it back down to 100. And the same thing if I try to input a negative value, say negative 25, and enter that, is going to coerce it to 0. So what I did, I set limits very quickly to prevent the user from, in this case, supplying a value that's greater than 100 or less than 0.